Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy this video, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon to be notified when the next one is uploaded. Today we will be reviewing a video by Brian Tyler Cohen, who we consider to be one of the leading opposition to the Trump administration, to illustrate how even those who are farthest along on the road to Damascus are yet to reach Golgotha. Critically, with the exception of a handful of Democrats like AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Letitia James, and Bernie Sanders, who is an independent, there is no indication that the Democratic Party are even close to embarking on the journey, talk less of leading the opposition. Their abject failure as an opposition is testimony to Trump's power, and the status quo will continue unless the likes of BTC, Midas Touch, Roland Martin, and Coach D, to name but a few, are prepared to carry them along. It is necessary to raise awareness, but unless it translates into political power, it is impotent and you are simply holding court until they come for you. For the record, we watched Brian and Glenn providing detailed analysis on multiple platforms in the years leading up to the 2024 election. We noted how Glenn tried to refrain from being critical of the pace at which Merrick Garland was prosecuting January 6, and how Brian would brook no criticism of Biden. But going forward, what the social media activists cannot afford to do is carry passengers. All those coming along for the journey need to be up for it, and that unfortunately is what many of the Democratic leaders are not. So, for the journey to succeed, the Democratic Party needs to be held accountable for its failure to protect democracy, and the current leaders, with the exception of Kamala Harris, have to go. Having said all that, let us begin our review.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have covered some bad days for Donald Trump in court where he's lost maybe a case, maybe two cases. He's never had a day like the one he just had. Can you explain what just happened to Trump in court?
Yeah, Brian, I have to admit, I love the headlines that read something like, within hours, Donald Trump is a quadruple loser in court. He lost in 4 significant legal cases. And
sorry to mute you, Glenn, but before going further, what does it matter if Trump loses in the lower court when he has captured the Supreme Court? You do remember how the documents case conveniently landed in the lap of Eileen Cannon after the special master debacle? And then, Clarence Thomas advised her on how to throw the case. So, by now you should understand that it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. Videos like these should include a call to action, with links to where those wishing to take action can go to sign up. And perhaps a follow-up video featuring Democratic representatives facing hard interviews about what they are doing to push back. People need to know how they can get involved because democracy is not a spectator sport.
the third was right here in my backyard, Washington, D.C., where the chief of federal district court in D.C., Judge Jeb Boasberg, ruled that the 140 Venezuelan migrants that the Trump administration unlawfully, unconstitutionally deported to that dangerous prison in El Salvador, they all must be given their due process rights because those deportations were illegal. And what the judge said was, I'm going to give the Trump administration 1 week to come back to me and tell me how they're going to accomplish giving all of those 140 wrongfully deported immigrants their rights. Now, he stopped short of ordering that they all be returned. He ordered that they must have their due process rights satisfied, and there are a number of ways that the administration might be able to accomplish that.
And there's the rub of it. The judge stopping short of ruling that they should be returned is a big red flag. A sign that he is perhaps engaging a saber-rattling or virtue signaling. But critically, what does it matter what the judge rules if the executive does not comply? Why should a president that was granted full immunity by the Supreme Court obey any law?
The fourth loss involves a firebombing out in Boulder, Colorado. You may have seen the reporting about somebody named Mohammed Sabri Soleiman, who is an Egyptian national who is charged with, accused of firebombing a pro-Israeli demonstration in Boulder, which is horrific, right? That is somebody who should be held accountable. He needs to be given his due process rights, his right to an indictment, his right to a trial. But here's what the Trump administration did. They took all 5 members of this gentleman, Soleiman's family, into custody, and not a single one of them are charged with a crime, including a 4-year-old child of the suspect. Well, a judge intervened and blocked the deportation of Soleiman's entire family without complying with their constitutional rights, due process, and otherwise, because it looked like the Trump administration just intended to whisk them all away, by violating their due process rights. So that's the third big loss. And
that right there is what autocracy looks like, and the best way of challenging it is to develop a visible sign that people are gearing up for action. The most effective demonstration of that will be the people signing up to come under whatever umbrella or movement is signposted for them. And as commendable as what you guys are doing is, it will need to translate into civil action to have any discernible effect. Apathy is the enemy of democracy and the bedrock of autocracy.
So that is the 4th case within hours on the same day that Donald Trump lost. I mean, this man is the biggest legal loser our nation has perhaps ever seen.
As a civilian, he may have been the biggest legal loser that the U.S. has ever seen, but it didn't stop him from becoming the most powerful president ever in U.S. history, second time around. And this time around, he can act with impunity because he has been given immunity. So, what does it matter if he suffers temporary losses in court?
Glenn, how unorthodox is this? Because the way we've spoken in the past is that the DOJ doesn't bring cases unless they are virtually assured to win them. And prior to this administration, the DOJ had something like a 98 or 99% win ratio because the cases that they brought, the cases that they put their resources toward, were all such home runs. And in fact, they wouldn't take cases that they had some chance of losing because they had established this precedent of only wanting to expend resources where they were virtually guaranteed victory. And so now we have reporting that something like 96% of the cases the DOJ takes on in court, they're losing. So they go from a 98% win ratio to a 96% loss ratio. How unusual is that from someone like, in your vantage, where you worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., and were part of this organization that would see so many wins?
Let me just jump in there briefly, Brian, before Glenn provides his erudite response. Those stats are more an indictment of Biden's DOJ than Trump's, and the main reason why the January 6th prosecutions took so long to get going ultimately failed to hold the leaders accountable, thereby bringing things to where they are now. But let's hear Glenn's reply.
Brian, a lot to unpack there, but let me not bury the lead. Let me directly answer your question. What does it say that the Department of Justice, which endlessly boasts and brags about having a 99% conviction rate, is now losing in court 96% of the time? It says 2 things. One, it says that Donald Trump is engaged in lawless and unconstitutional conduct 96% of the time, at least as measured by the court challenges that are being brought of his executive orders, for example. And 2, the DOJ lawyers that Donald Trump is scraping off the bottom of somebody's shoe and throwing into court are not the best, they're not the brightest, and they're not the most ethical because they're doing Donald Trump's dirty bidding. Brian, they're going into court and they are making unsupportable arguments that Donald Trump's unlawful conduct is actually lawful, that Donald Trump's unconstitutional conduct is actually constitutional. So I don't want to blame it all on these third-rate lawyers, with apologies to actual third-rate lawyers, but that's part of it. The lion's share of it is Donald Trump is acting unlawfully 96% of the time. But I do want to unpack something else in fairness, because I lived for decades inside the Department of Justice, my professional home, listening to people prattle on about their 99% conviction rate. First of all, that is not a badge of honor, it's a badge of shame, because that means the DOJ lawyers are not taking the difficult but righteous cases. They're only taking the sure things to trial. So this is an enormous badge of shame, dishonor.
That's right. Biden's DOJ shirked their responsibility to prosecute the January 6th leaders, hoping that the electorate would do it for them.
Glenn, I want to bring up one specific case that you mentioned in the very beginning, and that was that Donald Trump lost the appeal in his effort to dismantle the Department of Education. So he had lost in a trial court, he lost in the appeals court. Does that mean the next step we're going to see in terms of his effort to dismantle this federal agency is going to be the Supreme Court weighing in?
100%, because I don't think anybody would lay even a $1 bet on Donald Trump accepting losing in the trial court, losing in an appeals court, but not trying to push that case up to the Supreme Court. So 100%, he's going to try to get the Supreme Court to accept review of that case.
The perception that the Supreme Court rides for Trump, which has eroded public trust and confidence in the judiciary, is something that Biden and the Democrats failed to address.
We will learn a lot by whether the Supreme Court, one, accepts review of the case, and if they do, obviously we will learn even more when we get a Supreme Court opinion on whether Donald Trump can basically run roughshod over a co-equal branch of government, the legislative branch, Congress.
Now, Glenn, we already know that the Supreme Court slides for Trump and he runs roughshod over Congress, so the only thing people need to know is what can or will be done about it, and what role they have to play, including how many seats in Congress are required to effect change. This is where the Democrats keep failing. The public need to be informed about what needs to be done.
So for those who are watching right now, if you'd like to stay on top of these stories and any other legal news, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. It's the best way to support our work and the best way to support independent media more broadly. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirschner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.
And there you have it, Brian. Relevant videos need to carry the same type of message signposting people to where they can go to register to participate beyond just voting. Democracy is not a spectator sport, and someone needs to marshal the forces.